And we welcome you into episode number 11 of the best podcast available. We are officially 1 week away from what has seemed like an eternity away, and now just 1 week till the 2021 NFL Draft here in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm Jason Gibbs alongside Andrew Gribble. This is the best podcast available. Coming up on the program today, we will be talking with Charlie Yook. He is the NFL Network Vice President of Production. He is running the NFL draft coverage for NFL Network starting next week, a Miami University graduate of Ohio, that is. So a fellow Maction member. He will join us coming up in just a few minutes. Right now, though, he is joining us right on the screen below. His name is Dane Brugler, and he is the draft guru. And he is the author of this 267 pages. Bosses, they might have a problem with me printing it, Dane, but no big deal. The draft analyst from The Athletic and a big-time contributor to the Cleveland Browns and our draft coverage. Once again this year, Dane Brugler joins us. And Dane, appreciate the time. Congratulations on that, especially with the fact that I believe you have a wife that is pregnant with twins going on right now.
I do. A very beautiful and understanding wife who is pregnant with twins. So no, I appreciate it. It's awesome to be on with you guys. This is it's been a challenging process. You know, it's just been everything's been different about this draft year. Just like everything else in the world. So it's been a little different, but I'm very, very proud that we've made it up to this point where we're a week out and it's almost here. And pretty soon we'll be talking about the fits and how guys are going to, mix in well with each organization, especially the Browns. But for another week, we get to talk about what could be.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot that could be happening in the next week. A lot still to be determined. We think we know what's going on at pick 1 and pick 2. After that, buckle up, kids. Yep. It's going to be an interesting one. Your thoughts on how this draft is shaping up 1 week to go here before the draft?
Well, I think you set it up, I think, correctly. We feel pretty confident that Trevor Lawrence will be the pick at number 1 to the Jaguars and Zach Wilson will be the pick number 2 to the Jets. And then that's where the draft starts. And, the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, they've been going around the country, go see Mac Jones at his pro day, his second pro day. Same thing with Justin Fields in Columbus, Trey Lance at Fargo this past week. And I don't think it's a case of smoke screens. It's not, we know what's happening 1 and 2. This is just a case of the 49ers doing their due diligence. And they traded up from 12 to 3 with a specific quarterback in mind. And now it's just about keeping an open mind, but also doing extra work on all these guys, just to make sure they have it down. Who they're taking is who they want. Because we have to remember, area scouts have not been on the road in the fall. Without the combine this year, teams haven't had a chance to sit down with these guys and go through the film and put them on the whiteboard just to get a better sense for how they think, how they view the field, what they know, what they don't know. They've had plenty of virtual visits, through Zoom and that type of thing, but we know that's not quite the same. And so a chance to see more eyes on these players, these quarterbacks will help the 49ers make their decision. Playing things very close to the vest. We're still kind of guessing which quarterback they might prefer number 3. But a lot of noise. Most of the buzz out there among NFL teams is Mac Jones. And so right now he seems to be the favorite just by what the league tells us. But I don't think I'd be surprised if any of those 3 quarterbacks, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, if any of those quarterbacks was announced as the pick at number 3, would not be surprised.
With the time winding down to the drafting, does it feel like a normal draft still, or does the effects of last year, will it hang over this draft all the way until it happens?
Yeah, there's definitely been some different parts of this. Not having the combine was obviously a huge step missing. We had the Senior Bowl, which is great. That was some sense of normalcy. The pro day circuit was, somewhat normal. So that was nice, but not having the combine, that was obviously, a big missing step in what we're usually used to of evaluating these guys. So that's something that teams have been working through. But for the most part, I think they feel good. I think really the biggest thing is getting a chance to know these players without those facility visits. I don't think people realize how important those are. Each year in a normal year, teams they're each allowed to bring in 30 players to the facility, usually in the month of March, sometimes into April, and just get to know them better, not just as the players, but as people. Are they going to mesh with the coaching staff? Culture wise, are they a fit? And a lot of times a player will leave from his visit and you kind of cross him off the list. It's just not exactly a fit. And that's okay. But not having those facility visits this year, even pro days, sometimes, you would arrive a day early, take a player out for dinner. Can't do that this year. Maybe you could bump into him 5 minutes after his pro day for a quick chat. And that's it. For the most part, it's all virtual visits this year, which is certainly different. And so I think getting to know the player is one thing, but getting to know the people, each one of these guys off the field, that's the biggest hurdle this year. That's different than most years, and really why we might see some teams be a little more conservative. Maybe with some guys aren't squeaky clean off the field, and so maybe some teams, other teams might not be willing to take a chance on a guy like that, especially early in the draft. They might be willing or might be leaning towards being a little more conservative with a player or person that they have a good feel about who they are and how they'd be a fit. So I think that's the biggest difference in between normal years and this year is just the limited amount of opportunities to get to know these guys as people.
Shifting the focus to the Browns, when you're a team like the Browns that are coming off a playoff year, bringing back a lot of guys, signed a lot of guys in free agency, is it possible still to draft the best player available? Or when you look at the board, does it have to be need based when you're approaching this as the Browns right now?
Well, and in the first round, you want to take the best player. But when you're picking late first round, that kind of maybe that's a moving target a little bit because, in most drafts, teams have around 20 first round grades. So once, when your Browns picking at 26, I think generally you look at picks 21 through 40 and say, kind of the same, kind of on a similar playing field in terms of overall grade. And so you might be willing to, reach a little bit for a need. But for the most part, I think you have to really be reactive to how the first 25 picks play out. There's going to be some surprises. We know that there are every single year. And I mean, who knows? Maybe one of those first round grades will fall to you at 26, maybe not. But I think you'll have plenty of opportunity to possibly trade back. That's something that could happen there at 26. But I think with the way that they address free agency, the way they answered a few of their needs, there's not one position that you point to and say they have to go here in the first round. And I think that the depth of this draft in certain positions, talking about pass rusher, corner, even offensive line and wide receiver, even throw them in there. The depth of those positions, I think, will allow them to not force a pick at 26, where they can feel if they don't go corner or pass rusher at 26, I think they still feel confident about who they can get in the second and third round. So I think with the depth of this class at certain positions and, just the way they attacked the offseason up to this point, the Browns are in a position where they can really genuinely go with the best player and, who's going to make the biggest impact on this roster, not just for this year, but for the next, 3 to 5 years. They can go in that direction and not feel like they have to reach on a pick.
Talking with Dane Brugler, the NFL draft analyst for The Athletic. You can get his draft guide, 636 prospects ranked, 415 scouting reports from Dane, the Beast. Go on to theathletic.com and get a subscription today. It is totally worth your time, especially if you are a big draft fan. And outside of day one, when you're trying to figure out who these guys are, this draft guide comes in handy more than you can ever imagine. We use it for all of our radio network coverage and excited to go through it here with Dane Brugler on the best podcast available. Dane, you just talked about it, drafting for now versus drafting for the future. You touched on it a little bit. And how much should the Browns be looking maybe to draft more so for the future with, the offense entirely back and defensively, a lot of holes filled via free agency?
Yeah, and I think when you look at this Browns front office, you can bet they've talked about, okay, what's the roster going to look like 3 years from now? How do we envision the wide receiver depth chart? How do we think that offensive line is going to look 3 years from now? Every smart organization is doing that because they're planning out, okay, how, who do we need to resign? Who needs to be a priority? Where can we maybe, address this need in a different part of, whether it's a draft or signing a guy, develop him, and maybe let a veteran go. So they're looking at that. If you're the Browns, you're looking at that long term, and you're saying, okay, well, maybe we might have a need at wide receiver when you look 3 years from now, or maybe 2 years from now. So maybe wide receiver could be more of a need for this team than just looking on the surface and looking at the roster currently, how it's constructed. And so would it be a surprise if they went wide receiver in the first 2 rounds? I don't think so. When you factor in the strength of this draft being wide receivers and some of the talent, if the right wide receiver were to fall to them at 26 or in the second round, you could see them, jumping at that chance and, developing him for a year or 2 before he's ready to step in as a starter. And I think, especially, Browns fans, they used to having a top 10 to 12 pick in most years. And so with those picks, you want an impact guy. You want a guy that's going to come in from day one and, be that Jedrick Wills that makes an impact, that influences, your team and the scoreboard. But when you're picking at 26, when you're picking later in the second round and you have the roster that the Browns have, which is, one of the better rosters in the NFL, I think I can comfortably say that. You can, your thinking starts to shift a little bit with how you draft. And it's not just about the here and now and the immediate needs. It's projecting out and being prepared for every scenario. So, and of course it depends on who's there. If the right player falls to you, you pull the trigger and you feel good about it for not maybe right now, but for what it means long-term.
Dane, before we get into your 7-round mock with the Browns, I'll just ask you a philosophical question. The Browns, as you talked about, a deep roster. They're picking late in the draft. They also have 9 picks.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have 9 spots on the roster. What do you typically see teams in this situation do if they have more picks than roster spots? And what are some options for the Browns and how to use these picks?
I think it really comes down to 2 things, packaging picks to move up. If they really have say they go corner in round 1 and then in round 2, they really have an eye on a pass rusher, a specific pass rusher. And maybe you package, 2 of those day 3 picks to move up 5 spots in the second round to make sure you get your guy. Small price to pay for, the right player. So I think that's certainly an option for this team. But also I think, and it might be tough because I think we're going to see a lot of smart teams try and do this, but try to get picks for next year. So you're trading a 4th round pick for a 3rd round pick next year, or a 5th for a 4th. And part of that is just, obviously the value of it getting a higher pick just at a later date, but also just the fact that next year's draft, we're going to have a better idea of, hoping that things are back to normal or semi back to normal next year. And next year's class is going to be a lot deeper. This year we have, I think it's like 650 players that have signed with agents, 650 prospects. Normally we're like at 1,800 players that sign with agents at this point. So there's just a lot of players that went back to school, taking advantage of that extra year of eligibility. And so next year, with the normal process where, they have more information on these guys, area scouts will be on campus in the fall, hopefully. And, we have the combine again, have more information about some of these day 3 picks. And then just the sheer volume of players that we'll have in next year's draft. That's something that forward-thinking teams are really focusing on. And so I would not be surprised at all if we see the Browns trade picks this year to try to get picks into next year to kind of stockpile and just give them more options next year.
Now getting into your 7-round mock, you've got Greg Newsome from Northwestern at 1, Peyton Turner, the edge rusher from Houston in the 2nd round, and then Alan McNeil, the defensive tackle, in round 3. Those are 3 obviously big areas of need for the Browns. I mean, what do you like about each of those guys? And I guess obviously you're projecting them to be there, but is there a guy there that you wouldn't be surprised comes off the board a lot earlier than you got him listed there?
I think Greg Newsome is almost the best case scenario for the Browns at 26. I think in some ways you look at him and it's just, there's no way he's going to get there, right? I mean, because he's that good of a player. 6 foot, 192 pounds, legit 4.3 speed. I call him a route magnet because he stays attached to wide receivers. He runs routes for them. Really quick feet. His drive quickness is outstanding. A lot of comparisons to maybe like a Kyle Fuller. Played a lot of years with the Bears, now with Denver. Just a really quality player. 2 areas you worry about. 25 passes defended, but only 1 interception, 0 forced fumbles. So you want to see more turnovers there. And then also just needs to stay healthy. And I think that may be why he could fall out of the top 25. He's missed at least 3 games each of the last 3 years. Nothing too serious, more soft tissue injuries. It was a groin injury this past year. But still reason, cause for concern, especially for, a team like the Browns. They know all about that. Denzel Ward missing a little bit of time here and there. It's one of those positions where bigger's a little bit better just because it's, in terms of coverage and surface area, but holding up physically, being a durable player is so important. And so because of that, maybe he could slip a little bit. And if he does, I think the Browns, that value might be too good to pass up there at 26. At pass rusher, with Peyton Turner, this is a pass rush group that's really interesting because we're missing those top guys in the top 10. But in the teens, in the late first round, that's where we're going to see these pass rushers come off the board. I'm sure there's going to be several pass rushers the Browns will consider at 26, whether that's, a Jason Oweh or if Azeez Ojulari gets to 26. To me, that's a no-brainer. We'll see if he gets that far. But if they don't go pass rusher in the first round and they wait until the second round, then I think you're hoping for like a Carlos Basham. You're hoping for a Peyton Turner, and that's where I had him going in the mock. 6'5.5", almost 270 pounds, super long player, over 35-inch arms. What I loved about his film is the cranked up motor. And this guy does not quit. He's making plays from the backside. He's making plays down the field that defensive ends have no business making, but by sheer effort and just the nonstop motor, he's making some of those plays. He's a little high cut. And so, you see that with some of his movements. But when you have that length, and I think he can be coached up, there's a lot to like about what he's going to bring to your roster as a sub-package player as a rookie. And then, hopefully by year 2, he's pushing for starter reps. And then Alim McNeill, I think he checks a lot of boxes with what the Browns could be looking for at defensive tackle. It's not a great defensive tackle here. If you're going to rank the positions, defensive tackle is probably at the bottom, just in terms of overall talent, in terms of depth. But once you get to that third round, there are some interesting options. The USC defensive tackles, Milton Williams out of Louisiana Tech, and Alim McNeill out of NC State, 6'2", 317 pounds, a high school linebacker who moved to the defensive line at NC State. He's still learning the position a little bit. He was a nose tackle for the Wolfpack. But he's not just a block eater, a guy that's going to occupy doubles and open up things for everybody else. He has athleticism. For a guy that's 320 pounds, he ran a sub 5 second 40-yard dash. He, good jumps, good 3-cone, strong as an ox. There's a lot to like about McNeill, not just what he is now, but his upside as well. He's only 20 years old. It reminds me a lot of Javon Hargrave when he was coming out of South Carolina State, 4 or 5 years ago. Steelers drafted him in the 3rd round, and now he's with the Eagles. But just a really quality player who's going to be part of a rotation and then has a chance to be an impact starter for you.
Talking with Dane Brugler, draft analyst for The Athletic, and you'll see him a lot and hear him a lot in the coming days here on the Cleveland Browns various platforms as he helps us out with our draft coverage once again here in 2021. Kind enough to give us a few minutes here today on the best podcast available. I want to go back to edge, and Ojulari from Georgia obviously is a guy that I know that you've had your eye on. The question is scheme. Does it matter? Does it not matter? 3-4, 4-3, depending on what type of scheme that they play. I mean, does that factor in to whether or not he's a fit here or not? Or do you overlook that and just look strictly at the talent?
And I think just looking at the raw, height, weight, you think, okay, well, he's a 3-4 only, play him in space. But, he has 34.5-inch arms. So he has the length of a player that's 6'5", but he has the benefit of being 6'2". So he can use that leverage. He can dip around the corner. It's almost the ideal body type, really, when you think about it. 250 pounds, doesn't have the ideal, weight, but he's instinctive. I think he can play the run. He can play the pass. I think he can play in a 4-3 just fine and be a productive guy. I think you could be creative with him too. You can drop him off the line of scrimmage. You can move him around, whether you can stunt and twist and do these different things with him, or just let him pin his ears back and go. And he's going to challenge the corner and force tackles to be on their toes. So, I think there's a lot you could do with Ojulari, and if he's there at 26, I would jump at the chance to add him to my, pass rush rotation. And then, I think he'd be a guy that's going to compete for starting reps. But there's a couple pass rushers in this class that are kind of like that. I mean, Jason Oweh is a little bit like that. Joe Tryon from Washington is a really interesting name that I don't think gets talked about a ton, but he could be in the mix there at 26. He's an opt-out this past year, 6'5", 260. It looks like an action figure. I mean, the way he's built, it's just really impressive. It's kind of how you draw it up. He's got long arms, 34-inch arms, big hands. The athletic testing is outstanding. Production-wise, not going to blow you away. 9 sacks in his career, but again, he was an opt-out, so we're missing a year of development there for him. Led the team in sacks in 2019. There's just a lot you can do with a guy like Joe Tryon, and once you get to that later portion of the first round, you get different. You talk to people around the league, and it's nothing close to a set rankings of how these pass rushers are viewed. Some, Jalen Phillips out of Miami, not on some boards because of the injury history. Gregory Rousseau out of Miami, really liked by some teams and not even in consideration in the first round for some other teams. Jason Oweh out of Penn State, who is the freakiest of the freaks when you talk about the natural athleticism for a guy that's 6'5", 260, but 0 sacks. That's a number that stands out more than any other for some teams. And, they question, okay, he's not the most instinctive player. Can we coach that? Or is that more of he just is what he is? There's debate about Jason Oweh. So no consensus on the order of these pass rushers, how early they should go, how many should go in the first round. It's a really interesting group of flawed but skilled pass rushers this year.
At the corner position, we know about Greg Newsome, but is there a guy that you could see that would be worth it to make the move up for a few spots? And how much would you even have to move up to get some of those guys?
Yeah, Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn, we expect to be the first 2 corners drafted. I mean, there's a good chance that Surtain could be the first defensive player drafted, period. Looking at 10 and the Cowboys, maybe 11 to the Giants, 13 to the Chargers, 12 the Eagles. J.C. Horn, if he were to fall a little bit, I don't think he's going to, but if he were to fall, say past, the Cardinals at 16, because I think you look at, 10 with the Cowboys, 12, 13, and then 16, all logical landing spots for J.C. Horn. If he were to get past those spots, and so, 17, 18, then maybe you start to think about it with what he could bring to your team. 6'1", 205 pounds, 33-inch arms. Really, really aggressive, almost to a fault. And that's kind of a double-edged sword with him, is just how aggressive he is. But at the same time, you'd rather your corner be super aggressive and you kind of reel him back a little bit, as opposed to the opposite, where he's maybe a little too passive and you're trying to get him to be, a little more fiery with how he plays. So with J.C. Horn, the other thing I really like about him is, talk to the South Carolina coaches and they tell you the moment he stepped on the campus as a true freshman, he was part of the culture change. Not even part of it. He was leading the culture change as just a natural leader, a guy that is not as brash as his dad. He's not going to pull a cell phone out of a sock anytime soon. Talking about Joe Horn, the Pro Bowl wide receiver. But he is a guy that is not afraid to speak up and not afraid to lead by example. So J.C. Horn's an easy player to like. There will be some penalties. There will be some discipline issues, just talking about on the field. But as he works through those hiccups, he's going to be a really quality corner in this league.
Then I'll shift the focus. You mentioned wide receivers, and this has become maybe slightly more possible in the last couple of weeks. But is there an offensive player you could see the Browns using a first-round pick on? And is there someone you would jump at if they got to that point?
Yeah, I think it probably depends. Let's just say none of those top 3 receivers, JAMARR Chase, the 2 Alabama receivers with Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. Let's say none of those 3 were to fall, which seems far-fetched that they would. So none of those 3 receivers fall. Is there another receiver that is at least in the conversation for the Browns if maybe their defensive board gets wiped out? I'm sure that they're sitting at 26. They've got a list of 5 to 7 names of guys they really want to see there at 26. Let's say, Greg Newsome and whichever pass rushers they value highly off the board at that point. But is there a wide receiver that they view as a first-round player, that 4th receiver off the board, who could be worth it to them? That's kind of the question. And that's where, similar to the pass rushers, you talk to different teams, you get different opinions on who's 4, 5, 6, 7, the rankings of the wide receivers this year. Kadarius Toney out of Florida, 6 foot, 193 pounds. He's like a magician out there with some of these plays that he's making guys miss, creating after the catch. Just a fun player, more gadget than polish as a route runner, but still a guy that you can, work into your offense, and he's going to create big plays for you. Another guy that's kind of similar, but a little more polished is Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, 5'9.5", 180 pounds. Speed is the big thing with him. Legit 4.3 athlete. In Lane Kiffin's offense, they force-fed him the ball, and he responded in a big way. 10.8 catches per game, led the FBS last year. There's a lot to like about him as a quick-hitting underneath player, but he also showed that he can win deep, track the ball, sluggos, vertical routes. He can do those things as well. So Elijah Moore would be awfully enticing. And then Rashad Bateman, a different type of receiver. He's more of your savvy, be able to use footwork at the stem, leverage coverage with, the way he uses his body, the route manipulation. So with Bateman, it's just a different style of receiver who could come in and compete for playing time pretty early in his career because he is an NFL ready player. But I think the argument to that is you look at the wide receiver group and it stretches second, third, fourth round. It's a deep group. So if they were to go wide receiver, I think it would be a surprise if it happened in round 1, just because of some of the defensive players that should be there, but also because it's a position that they can get really good value, in a second, third, fourth, even into day 3. I think there's good value at that point.
Talking with Dane Brugler, NFL draft analyst for The Athletic. Make sure you subscribe today to The Athletic. Go to theathletic.com. Get his draft guide, 267 pages, the beast that is out now, 1 week from now, the 2021 NFL draft. I want to double back real quick on the defensive side. Linebackers, Zaven Collins, a guy that all of a sudden is rocketing up the boards in Jamin Davis from Kentucky. Those two players, I know Zaven Collins was mocked to the Browns by a number of people for a few months, and that's kind of cooled off a little bit, but still some talented linebackers here.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest, I kind of like what they have going at linebacker right now in the current depth chart. I don't know that they need to add another body to that linebacker room, at least in the first round or first few rounds. But there will be talent there, and we'll have to see which linebackers fall to 26. There's a good chance we see Micah Parsons, Zaven Collins, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah off the board at that point. Jamin Davis is an interesting name out of Kentucky, 6'3.5", 235 pounds. 1-year starter, but he was really good in that 1 year for Kentucky this past season, averaged over 10 tackles per game, had 3 interceptions, 1 he returned back for a pick 6 against Tennessee, which really showed off his athleticism. And then he reminded people of that at his pro day, running a 4.47 in the 40-yard dash, 42-inch vert, 11 broad, just really explosive, especially for a guy that size, 33-inch arms. Can he be that Darius Leonard, that Zach Cunningham? He's got the potential to be that guy. So it's the guy you think about. It's a guy that should be in the conversation. But like I said, I don't know that when you look at the linebackers they have on the roster, if they're looking at that and say, we're in our base defense is, we're a lot of nickel, a lot of dime. How many linebackers we're gonna have on the field anyways? We only need maybe 2 that we feel great about. So I don't know that they need to go linebacker early, even though there will be some talent there for them to consider.
All right. 2 real quick questions for you. Rapid fire. JAMARR Chase or Kyle Pitts?
Kyle Pitts. They're 2 different positions. Kyle Pitts is a tight end. I wholeheartedly believe that, but he's just different. He's a unicorn. He's a special player. He's going to give the Falcons a tough decision to make it number 4 if they take the quarterback for the long term or they take the best non-quarterback in the draft, which is Kyle Pitts, in my opinion, at number 4.
Is there a Dane Brugler bold prediction for this draft 1 week out?
Well, okay, we're going to see this draft is going to be all about the quarterbacks, right? So there's a chance we're going to see quarterbacks 1, 2, 3, 4, which has never happened before. There's a chance we're going to see 5 quarterbacks going to the top 10, which has never happened before. But I'm also going to say that's going to keep going. We're not done there. We're going to see at least 7 quarterbacks drafted in the first 2 rounds, which has never happened before. So with those 5 quarterbacks likely in the top 10, and then you factor in a Davis Mills, a Kellen Mond, maybe a Kyle Trask, that would be 8 right there. And we've never had more than 6 quarterbacks go in the first 2 rounds. So quarterback going to break all types of records this year.
Just that's fine. We have a quarterback. Just keep pushing that talent back to us.
There you go.
Everybody keep hopping on the quarterback train. Dane Brugler, appreciate your time. All the best, and we look forward to talking with you a lot more here in the coming days. Look forward to your draft coverage on The Athletic. I know you're going to be doing pick-by-pick analysis as things come down, and doing a few more things on The Athletic all draft weekend, in addition to hopping on a few of our shows here and there and doing some stuff with us as well. Appreciate the time. Make sure you get the copy of his draft guide, The Beast. Go on to theathletic.com and subscribe today. Dane, appreciate the time. For more on the 2021 NFL Draft earlier in the week, Gribble and I had a chance to sit down with NFL Network Vice President of Production Charlie Yook, a Ohioan via college at least, but getting ready for his 7th NFL Draft and being in the lead chair of the NFL Network's draft coverage. Have a watch and have a listen. And here on the best podcast available, Jason Gibbs, Andrew Gribble, Bowling Green alum, Ohio University alum, and now we're joined by a Miami Redhawk. We're willing to look the other way because he's pretty big time at the NFL Network. Charlie Yook, Vice President of Production for NFL Network, and the man that will be bringing you the 2021 NFL Draft from the CLE in just days from now, joins us. And Charlie, appreciate a few minutes of your time, and glad to have I know you weren't born and raised in Ohio, but you went to school here, so that does make you an honorary Ohioan. We're happy to have you on board here today.
Appreciate it, guys. Looking forward to the draft in Cleveland. It's here shortly in 14 days.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. What have you discovered from a year ago and all the trials and tribulations to get a network draft show up and running that can carry over to this year and beyond? What has the last year been like for you guys in terms of doing draft?
Yeah, no, that's a good starting point, Jason. Look, we're hungry, right? We worked in conjunction with ESPN and ABC last year to put the draft on together. This will be NFL Network's first draft since the Nashville draft in 2019. We're lucky and honored to be doing it in Cleveland, a passionate sports town, as you guys know, where Browns fans are going to be rabid and they're going to show up 2 weeks from today. We learned a lot of things in the last year, I think, both on and off the field, right? And one of the most important things I think we learned from the draft that'll carry over this year that you and your fans will see is that human element. We're going to have over 60 cameras right in players' homes to see those moments with their families when they get selected. All 32 teams will be represented with cameras at their locations. There's going to be a good number of prospects in Cleveland. We're at 10 right now, hoping to get that number to about 15 or 17. But I think family is something that we always use, right? Football is family is a phrase we use for the NFL. And I think of this last year, we all realized how important family is in general. And I think once these players join their football families and share the moment with their actual families, those are the things I think people, can resonate with and take home with. And those are the moments. And I think those emotions that we see on screen that kind of go a long way. In addition to what we, talk about them on the football field, it's the off the field stuff that kind of matters as well.
In the year that you've been preparing for this moment, did you kind of have 2 parallel plans going into this if you had to go virtual again, or how did you map out your plans for this?
Yeah, it's a good question too, Andrew. We started mapping this out in May, not knowing what April was going to look like. And they were just thoughts, ideas. I think like I said, we learned a lot from that 2020 draft being virtual. So a lot of those things that you see, what did people talk about? They talked about Belichick's dog. They talked about Cliff Kingsbury's house. These are the things we want to make sure that we keep this year. But the ideas themselves, we just wanted to get better. So when, your fans tune in at 8:00 Eastern on NFL Network on April 29th, they see the tapes that are going to be great. They see the analysis they know they expect from Daniel Jeremiah, from Charles Davis, from Coach David Shaw of Stanford. They see our host, Rich Eisen, with this renewed passion again, doing his 17th draft when he couldn't do last year. So these are the things that we've been in the lab kind of working on. I'd be remiss if I didn't say Joe Thomas is going to be a huge part of what we're doing for pregame on Thursday and Friday night. Joe's fired up, ready to come back home. One of Cleveland's favorite sons, Chris Rose, Cleveland native, also Miami, Ohio graduate. Like, he's going to be there doing a lot of stuff for the Browns, in the community for us on NFL Network. So we're just ready to go. Like I said, it's such an honor and a blessing to be in a sports town like Cleveland. There's nothing like it. That passion is going to be, I think they're all week. We just got to hope for really good weather, boys. But I don't even think that's going to keep anybody away in the enthusiasm we have. But we're ready to go. We could do this thing tomorrow if we needed to, but we're ready and excited to put on a great show for everybody.
So at what point, as you get ready for this draft, and you've been putting these together since 2014 and even earlier than that, I know that you've had a role in it, but in your current role, really since 2014, when do things really start getting serious in terms of putting together everything that you're going to need for, I don't know, countless hundreds of players, bios, and yet keeping it informative and entertaining?
So when the calendar flips to 1-1 is when we start getting serious. Because as you guys know, we put on, not unfortunately this year we didn't get to do the East West Shrine game, but that's an important, game for us for these college all-star games. The Senior Bowl, Combine didn't happen this year, but the Pro Bowl, the Pro Days were massive emphasis for us. So as soon as we flip to 1-1 is when we start getting serious. We're going to try to have every, player analysis tape available. We've got over 600 kids that we've got, we've identified. It's probably close to 2,000 individual videotapes now. They're all digital, but we still call them videotapes. So we, like I said, the staff we have has been so ready to do this that I think it's more like, let's show people what we can do again, because we haven't done it in 2 years. So the XO tapes, as we call them, that do the full analysis of the players on the field. I've seen some of these things, guys, and like the graphics are pop, the sound effects pop, the angles pop. We really can't wait to showcase all this stuff to the viewing audience, because I think it's going to do a lot of things. And one of the two main things, it's going to tell you who the player is on the field, and it'll translate to what they're going to bring to your team, whether it's the Browns, whether it's the Ravens, whether it's the Steelers, whether it's the Broncos, whomever it is. We want to educate, but we also want to entertain too, because it's a night that's full of hope, right? Everyone hopes that this next player is the next, X, Y, or Z. So that's what we want to do, and I think we're ready to do it.
What's the biggest thing that changed for you personally when they started taking the draft on the road to these different locations, and maybe what's the biggest challenge that goes into these kind of broadcasts?
I think the first thing is identifying where do you want to be. So we take the lead from the league, as far as where the main set location is. This year it's right in between the stadium and the Science Center, which I think it's going to be a little windy, but they understand that. But, we identify that's going to be the main set area. We call that the theater set. And then we need to know where do we want to have a secondary set, an alternate set. We can do a bunch of other stuff. So this year we're going to be, we're calling it the garage set. It's the outdoor set. It's above the parking lot that kind of faces towards the lake. So that's where Joe Thomas and Chris Rose will be on Thursday and Friday. And then identifying other places where we can showcase stuff. So whether it's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for red carpet arrivals on Thursday, whether we're using the stadium like we are for Ian Rappaport, our insider, on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we just want to make sure we can showcase the city itself, because that's one of the most important things. Once we got into the model of, hey, we're going to go to different towns and different cities, make the draft really a traveling circus, how do we make sure that home city is a character in what we're doing? So it started in Chicago in 2015. I think we've learned a lot since then. So now as we look at 2021 in Cleveland, it's not just one of those things where you just assume it's going to happen. Cleveland's a huge part of what we want to do. That's why we shot so much stuff already. But one thing we missed, though, I couldn't believe we missed. We got to shoot. You got to tell me if it's going to be good. Is the Christmas Story house? We didn't shoot that yet, so we got to do that. But I think everything else we've kind of got banked and we're ready to go. As long as weather holds, like I said. But Cleveland's going to be a super important character, and it's identifying those things, those places we need to be and want to be when we get to a new city.
I got to ask, when you look back at last year, I imagine you were pretty close to done in the planning process for Vegas when the planning had to go. And is that something you can pick up again when you guys when the league goes to Vegas in a couple of years, or do you start fresh when you do?
No, the good thing is a lot of our plans should remain the same. So, but as you guys know, that's just the framework. Everything internally, that's what's going to separate what we do and what anyone else does, and that's what we take great pride in. And that our analysts, our hosts, our producers, our researchers, everybody from top to bottom, This is a passion project for them. You know, you only get so many moments, right, in general, to showcase what you can do, and opportunity when this comes like this. We want to take advantage of it. So with Vegas, once Cleveland's done, by no means are we looking past Cleveland right now, but at least it'll be a little easier knowing where we're going to be in Vegas. Open invitation for you guys to come out to Vegas in 2022. Yeah, those plans will be a little easier as we move ahead. You know, Kansas City's a site for 2023 and 2024 is open right now, but Kansas City's going to get a little more probably eyeballs on it just because we haven't looked at it yet. But Vegas, we're in a pretty comfortable spot knowing that there are certain locations identified. You'll see it on the Strip and everything else for those that are familiar with Vegas. So, but you know, our focus solely remains right now on Cleveland. We want to make sure we bring the best show, not just on site, but for the viewers as well.
NFL Network Vice President of Production, Charlie Yook, joins us here on the best podcast available with Gibbs and Gribs. Night 2, night 3, or day 3, I should say. You know, so much made of day 1 and everything that goes into that. And, you know, most fans, they'll know those names. Night 2, day 3, a little bit different. How do you go about figuring out, and again, making it entertaining and just for the casual fan to want to watch those 2 days of the draft, which for Browns fans, night 2 is going to be pretty important, I think, this year.
Yeah, look, it's what we got to do is be able to tell stories, and we got to draw emotion. And how do you do that? And the way we think about that first is it's the crop of players will always decide how the narrative goes. If the players aren't resonating, we can't help that. But where we can help that is with our announcers. So on Friday night, when the ball tips at 7:00 Eastern on that April 30th on NFL Network, you're going to see Rich Eisen. You're going to see Daniel Jeremiah. You're going to see Charles Davis. You're going to see Joel Klatt. You'll see Chris Rose. You'll see Peter Schrager. You'll see Ian Rappaport. You'll see Melissa Stark. I mean, it's an army of people that have been preparing since, like I said, last May, that are ready to put on a great show. And we've got every angle covered. You know, Rich is the utmost host. Daniel is as prepared as any draft analyst there's out there. Charles Davis does NFL games all year long, and Joel is the lead college football guy for Fox. So we've got that perfect harmony, I think, of every base covered. Ian, you know, is going to break news at some point. We're going to go to him. Melissa will handle the interviews on stage. And for a little bit, you know, of a different kind of view of it, we've got Chris Rose with Peter Schrager from everyone's familiar with Good Morning Football. You know, he's clued into all 32 teams as well. So we think we got a bite of every apple here to make Friday interesting. And then Saturday on May 1st, when it goes from 12 to 7 on NFL Network. Yeah, look, it's easy for the casual fan to be like, it's kind of boring what's going on. But you guys know, everyone points to Tom Brady on pick 199. Everyone points to all these guys. You're going to find Hall of Famers and players who make a contribution on this day. So it's incumbent upon us to tell the viewer, why is this pick important? Frame those things with research, analysis, tapes, and present the best announcers that we can. And that day, again, we've got Rich Eisen, Daniel Jeremiah, Charles Davis, Peter Schrager. I'll take that group to war anywhere. And we've got a lot of good things planned for Saturday specifically as well. You know, Run Rich Run, which has been a huge initiative for St. Jude, which is a great cause. That typically runs during Combine. That'll air day 3 on NFL Network. There is a special Hall of Fame show I know that's, Hall of Fame near and dear to the state of Ohio that we're going to be pushing to, that airs later that night as well, immediately following the draft. And America's favorite segment on day 3 on NFL Network is back, which is Stump the Truck, where we have our guys kind of ask the wonderful tape team we got, do you have this video of this random player? And it's either yes or no. And for some reason, it's always kind of trended on Twitter. That's our goal again. And it provides a little bit of break of just like pick, which, again, those are important, those recaps, but we want to have a little fun too.
What's the one or couple aspects of the draft coverage that may go unnoticed that by the casual fan that is for your source of pride, like something you guys put so much work into to just even make happen for the broadcast?
Yeah, I think it's the work the men and women do behind the scenes, right? The announcers are the famous people, but we've got, like I said, it's a small army of people that are making all these tapes. It's 5 folks in LA. It's 2 folks in NFL Films that are putting everything together. And it's not like this assembly line of people, like dozens of people. Honestly, it's like a handful of folks that put everything together. And those are the ones, they're the ones who are putting in the effort here. And I would say this too, our announcers, the people don't see that. They just assume they roll the ball out, right? Roll in there at 7:00 and they're on the air. That's not the case either. Like, we've got guys grinding tape watching, every night, making their notes, working on it, talking to each other, talking to the clubs. Those guys are all as connected to all 32 teams as anyone else is. But the fact of the matter is they're putting in the time and the effort to do this. So that's what I think people may take for granted when they just turn on the remote. They just assume things just happen. This is not a hyperbole. This has been happening since May 2020. And Andrew, like you kind of said, like we had to be ready for variables, but we're prepared for those variables. And I'm shocked right now. And that's rare for me to say at some of the high production value we have of this stuff, not because I didn't think we can do it, but just because the expectations for greatness have been they're completely over the top now. And I just can't wait to share all this stuff with everyone.
How have you seen Daniel Jeremiah grow? I mean, he was essentially the number 2 to Mayock. And then Mike goes and becomes the GM out in, at the time, LA, now Las Vegas. But here's a guy that really has found his niche. And on our end, I know we love to talk to him. He breaks it down as well as anybody. How fun is it to see some of these guys really kind of develop as you go?
Yeah, I think I'm never going to be a head football coach, but it's kind of identifying, knowing that, hey, your quarterback here is going to be the starter at some point, and he handled it with professionalism. He handled it with work ethic. I think there were always rumors, right, that at some point Mike could get a job. Listen, there are always rumors right now with Daniel, like he's been pegged sometime. But we identified it pretty early on. So we made sure, hey, let's give him the opportunity to showcase his skill set on a stage that's worth it. And when we made the decision to kind of move him to that main set in Philadelphia in 2017, that kind of shifted the narrative. So by the time that Mike did leave, when he was ready to take the number 1 reps, it wasn't going to be foreign to him. And look, it sounds crazy, but it's like, I'm so proud of the work that he's put in and all the accolades he's getting, because he worked hard at it. And like it's easy to say, like, yeah, he works hard, whatever, he's good at it, but he's also a good person. And you guys know this, you've talked to him. He's so clued into every single club, whether it's at the ownership GM level. He's as good a person there is. And that's why any sort of success he's gotten it makes me happy, just because he's earned it. He's earned every bit of it. And he's pretty fired up too. I talk to him every day, and we're ready not only to be in Cleveland, but like I said, he's like, let's rehearse. I'm like, we're 2 weeks away. This was last night. Like, we're 2 weeks away. We can figure it out. But, no, he's putting in a lot of work. He works. Activity is an achievement per se, but I've seen some of the stuff he's doing, and like I said, we're going to be. These are. I know these are vague teases, but we are going to wow some people here, I hope.
And can you kind of explain the process that goes into getting the footage inside these prospects' homes, and how that works, and how that's kind of advanced now after what you guys went through last year?
Yeah, the good news there is that the league kind of took over that last year, and it's made it easier on all the broadcast partners. So once we realized we had to be socially distant and, adhere to all this health and safety rules, from an operation player level, management council, they reached out to the players, the reps, and just be like, hey, we always want to have an always on camera and an ability to talk back. So a lot of this stuff has already been worked out. Like, we'll probably get upwards of about 60 player remote homes. They know that it's going to be there. It's going to be good for them. We're not trying to, supersede any moment. We're not going to tip any pick. We're not there to try to, damage anyone's credibility or reputation if for some reason they slide. We're there really to show a celebratory moment of a huge moment. Not many people get drafted in the NFL. We want to share that moment with not only that player, their family, that fan base. So it's worked out pretty well. The technical part of it, man, there's so many more people smarter than me that know how to figure that stuff out from like 2 different iPhones or 2 different smaller cameras, but it works. And I think, unless you guys are telling me, I think that's a very enjoyable part of the broadcast for a lot of viewers, just seeing those emotional moments with their families going to, the Browns.
Again, NFL Network first round coverage comes your way Thursday night, April 29th at 8 p.m. Rich Eisen, Daniel Jeremiah, Charles Davis, David Shaw, Kurt Warner, Joel Klatt, Rap Sheet, Melissa Stark, and then Friday night, Eisen, Jeremiah, Davis, and Klatt, and then Chris Rose, Peter Schrager, Rap Sheet, Melissa Stark. I know our guy Joe Thomas will be part of the pre-show, and then Saturday, Eisen, Jeremiah, Charles Davis, and of course P. Schrags will join us as well. Before we let you go, Charlie Yook, is there a moment that stands out to you? Is there a favorite moment in terms of doing this for the last however many years you've been doing it that stands out to you?
I think it's the most recent one we did that we were able to do in Nashville just in 2019. I think the fairest way to say it, when things were normal, and seeing 500,000 people up and down Broadway on that strip and having that long camera shot. Hopefully we're going to get back to one of those days, which I think we will. But that moment still sticks out just because of the massive humanity and the celebrations we had that night. I think it's not going to be as crowded for obvious reasons in 2 weeks, but I think all of us here know Cleveland's going to show up. They're going to be ready to go, and I think we're going to have some of those type of same moments as well. And I honestly, we can't wait. Well,
the pride of Miami. I know that everybody's proud of all you've accomplished down there, and from two other Maction guys, we love it, and I look forward to having some Maction all weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show, guys. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. NFL Network Vice President of Production, Charlie Yook, spending a few minutes with us. Charlie, best wishes in NFL Network's coverage. Thanks to NFL Network Vice President of Production, Charlie Yook, for a few minutes of his time. Gribbs, it's going to be quite the setup. Let's hope the weather cooperates, and quite the undertaking that NFL Network's doing. After a year of all virtual, it's going to be a little virtual. It's going to be a lot in person, though. The commissioner will be here, and 1 week from now, he will be on the stage announcing draft picks for the NFL draft.
It's not going to be what Cleveland could bring to its full potential, but it's going to be something. And I think that's going to be kind of a tentpole event as we get as close to normal as we possibly can going into 2021. Cleveland deserves it. It's a city that's loved the draft for years. And thankfully, you get the draft in a year where you don't need it as much as you did in the past.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to be picking 26th. And if we're a couple spots further down next year, I'd be even happier. So it's definitely something to watch. A lot is going to happen here in the coming days. We are 1 week out from the draft. Next week, we will come to you on Tuesday in advance of the 2021 NFL draft. It's our final look at the draft before it all happens and all shakes out. And then obviously comprehensive coverage in the weeks following on the best podcast available. Thanks to Jeff McDaniel for all of his hard work. Thanks to Dane Brugler doing an outstanding job joining us, and really some in-depth knowledge. Learned a lot on this week's podcast with Dane Brugler. And of course, Charlie Yook, the NFL Network Vice President of Production and the brains behind what you're going to see next week on NFL Network. You can like and subscribe today to the best podcast available wherever you get your podcasts, or by logging on to clevelandbrowns.com. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. Gribble was a YouTube sensation last week. youtube.com/Browns. For Andrew Gribble, I'm Jason Gibbs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the best podcast available.